we want them to share that energy. We want them to tell us what their experience was at Beijing at that time and how they see, the Beijing impacting on the lives of African women and girls. And that we are going to do in just 1 or 2 words. So that's going to be a challenge. Okay, a sentence. Because I think you can capture it in, just very few words, but strong words. And you can capture it in different ways. You can be innovative. If you think you can capture it in a song, or in a dance, or... but I believe that you can do that. That's also in the interest of time, because we're already behind the schedule. But we really think that it's very important to hear from you, and that will really energize us as we go into the 3 days meeting. So thank you so much. We'll start. Should we start from you? Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I don't have a creative way to do it, but I will say 3 things that stand out from my mind in Beijing. First of all, was the influence that African women had on the agenda. Of the 12 critical points, there were many that included, perhaps for the first time, the interest and context-specific issues that African women were dealing with. That's number 1. Number 2, young women, because I was young then. The presence of young women and the development or the subsequent development of programs and initiatives supporting the leadership development of young women. And I remember many of you have been on the Akina Mama Africa, African Women's Leadership Institute. Can I have a show of hands? There you go. Third thing I remember, there was a lot of rain in Cairo. There was a lot of grafting. And it was the first time I experienced people running away from me because of the color of my skin. There were young Chinese people who had never seen black people in their lives. We were in a place called Wairo. That's where they threw all the CSOs, in a remote place. And I remember going into a shop and people actually running away from me. And that has really colored the way I look at difference, the way I deal with issues of difference, even amongst ourselves as women. It has always guided me in trying to develop programs that are inclusive and that support the interests of all of us as African women. And I hope we can continue in that way.
Thank you. I went to Beijing as a journalist and as chairperson of the National Women's Council. So I was wearing 2 caps. And what struck me most was the importance of using the media to promote women's development and to address stereotype reporting of the media of women's issues. The second thing was freedom of expression. I remember I left my equipment in the room, and by the time I came back, somebody had tampered with my equipment. And that pushed me to even send a report, even though I was supposed to have been part of the government delegation. I went out of protocol. concluded in my report that the host country, was giving the media a very hard time. Thirdly, Beijing motivated me to invest my energy in media and gender advocacy. And this is something I have been doing since we returned to the Gambia, in Senegal, and everywhere that I am. It's an issue that is very strong, very close to my heart. So those are the three things, that I can, share with you on the spot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dakar was friendly, with challenges, but Beijing had more. But there was one thing great, that women without disabilities and women with disabilities are finding themselves as first and foremost women, being young or old. The tent for women with disabilities was far away in Wairo, so we need to ask for it in a hard way to be brought closer to the road. And we find it quite challenging that certain programs for persons with disabilities were placed upstairs, and people had to be carried with wheelchairs onto the floor. And that motivated us instead of weakening us. So some achievements were there. Some issues of persons with disabilities are in the platform of women and girls by the Beijing Plan of Action. But along the way, as much as we got strengthened, we also lost a bit. Many women talk about girls and women. They talk about equality, but do not emphasize adequately the inclusion of girls and women with disabilities. Double discrimination, whether it's refugees, whether it's HIV, whether it's displaced, among them are also girls and women with disabilities. So yes, energy, and with your collaboration, we are moving on as we stand in Beijing, never turning back. Thank you.
Could I just ask that if you could tell us your name again and where you're coming from? Because there are some here who are Beijing babies. So
I'm Linda Osare, Nigerian, and I went to Beijing from Nigeria. There, I wore 3 caps. I went as a government delegate. I also went as a journalist. I'm a journalist by profession. I was right there, full-time journalist, as well as an activist with an NGO working on women and gender. So in Beijing, I had a challenge. What do I report? Because there was negative reporting that it was a jamboree, and we needed to dispel that myth that it was a jamboree, because we saw so many women with the same dress, what in Nigeria we call a shodi. But Sarah Longway here came and said, and told us that it's good to make ourselves visible, if only in the dress. So there was nothing wrong in wearing the same dress. And so as a journalist, I tried to dissipate the ugly scene that a lot of women, not just Nigerian women, they went shopping because they said China is cheap. They went buying pearls, they went buying gold. And I have the task of saying we are there for something. But I must say one thing. They have spoken a lot, that the Women Conference in Beijing frightened the world. And the rest of the world, they were saying, how can we now organize the 5th World Conference? And that's why we keep having Beijing +5, Beijing +10, Beijing +20, whatever. And it's likely to continue to Beijing +50, because they said China had the space, had the ability, because the government action was in Beijing, while the NGO was in Wairo. So I was shuttling between Wairo and Beijing. But then we did come out with something. For once, we made good, positive noise, and we built on it when we went back home. We democratized the gains of Beijing, and that's what we are still doing. And one thing is that from Dakar 1994, Africa included the girl child. Before then, the girl child was not an issue for the Caucasian or the Asian, but Africa owns that 12th critical point, the girl child. And we still have problem with the girl child today, with pre-marriage and abducting of our girls for early marriage. So we are still there, trying to see what we can do to free the African girl child.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Longo from Zambia. And I went to Beijing as one of the 5 vice chairpersons of FEMIT. I was the chairperson for Southern Africa. So I'll share 3 ways in which we Africanized this. You can see it's well used. It used to be a nice blue one. So being a vice chair in Dakar, so we started doing it in Dakar, as in, collectively. Although we started in the village, we had national consortiums, then we had the sub-regional consortiums, but when we came to Dakar, we were one. And I was in charge of making sure that we put in the African aspect. So with the help of International Women's Rights Action Watch, IRA, they came with an electronic copy. So we sat, a group of us, but it was open. To start with, we're as big as we are. But by the end, we're only about 7 left. People disqualified themselves because it was they had to miss a lot of other things. I started with Dakar because in Dakar, as she said, we included the girl child. But not only that, we looked at social, cultural, economic, and political aspects of a woman's empowerment. And what happened in Beijing is that the ECA, their electronic version got corrupted. So they took ours, which already had our language. So African women in civil society, we started there. When we went to New York, the last preparatory meeting, all our issues were in the draft. And I was there again in charge of making sure we put the African voice. And our regional report is the one which had these 5 elements: social, cultural, political, economic, and ICT. So they again dwelled very much on our draft. When we went to Beijing, of course, we had already put things in. And as you know, the government in Beijing changed the venue last minute. And they moved the venue somewhere else. I was commuting as she was. Being in charge of inputting, I used to move in the morning. Early in the morning, I go 4 a.m. I go to Wailu, and we have Africa tent. We get our views, and then I dash. By 9 o'clock, I was in Beijing with the global team to make sure that our voices are there. So we started inputting right from the beginning. So let's not let this momentum which we started. This has all our issues, and it's very difficult for any government to say the same thing they say with SIDO, that it is Western. It's very difficult for them to say this is Western, because our ideas are all in it. And they are being retranslated now. We have the protocol on women's rights in Africa. It's to Africanize it, but it's already Africanized. So with the Beijing +20 for development agenda, let's not relent. Let's go back the way we did. We started in the village, national, and then sub-regional, and then we went to the global. Now we do it the other way around. Let's go back to the woman in the village. She knew about Beijing, but she's still struggling to find out why did we go that far. So, a luta continua. Good morning again. I'm Raf Valentin Mashava from Mozambique. I work for Women Law and Development. I'm a board member of Mbondgulo-Wondieh, and I'm also a board member of Women representing this organization. I went to Beijing when I was very young. When I came back to Mozambique, I got married. So, at the anniversary, the 20 years of Beijing platform, I'm also 20 years there. And when I was in Beijing, the first time I heard about sexual and reproductive health rights, I went to attend a session with lesbians. When we came back to the hotel, you cannot even imagine what I heard from my elders. Why did you go there? You also want to get married with those ladies. What? Tell us, where did you listen there? So I said, well, they were talking about one, they were talking about their own life. So why did you stay there at that session? Who told you to go there? So I didn't respond too much to the elders. I started crying. I said, what wrong did I do to go to that session? So I was told to be far away from the lesbians because I would become a lesbian. Imagine. But I'm here, and I went with a very big delegation from Mozambique, which was Mozambican Women's Organization, which was the biggest organization in Mozambique, connected to the government of Mozambique, connected to the Feminist Party, who was the ruling party. So I was a senior official at the Mozambican Women's Organization. The reason why I thought twice when I came back, I said, I cannot stay with this organization because I will be in a box. I can't exercise my rights. So I left the organization 15 years ago. I'm now with this organization, which is not a governmental organization. This is my experience in short, but I concur with what all my colleagues have said. Thank you.
Okay, we now come to a delegation from Tanzania. I'm going to give you media images. My name is Fatma Alu, founder of Tanzania Media Women's Association and Feminist. So I'll give you media images because I concur with whatever has been said here. One of my biggest image from China was an African woman at the helm of the whole Beijing, Gertrude Mongela, and my pride and joy being a Tanzanian. Okay, so that's one image. And we heard today from Emma that control, power, as we voice and choice. So that was happening there. Big entourages from Africa. Big groups from all the countries of Africa. The biggest, by the way, Ugandans. It was from Uganda. Okay? So that's another image. Just pure joy. Lots of dancing. Lots of rain. Women from the Middle East who had never ridden bicycles. They were cycling away with joy. Okay, so this was my image. The Kanga tent. Tamwa decided we will go there with our Kangas and make a tent to represent the visual impact of media, because in Tanzania women speak with Kangas. So the radio fire from Costa Rica, teaching us how to broadcast from the kitchen. I learned the technology there, okay? But I will leave you with the last image. Me, some of you were not even born then, but me as a very young woman, in very, very slim who is the slimmest here in this room? That's the image, okay? And wearing hot pants, okay? Sitting in the kanga tent, receiving visitors. That this is, you know, just freedom, total freedom. And suddenly, who walks into our tent? Our esteemed son of Africa, Mwalimu Julius Kabarage Nyabere, my president. Who was with him? Winnie Mandela. You know, they were friends. They were very good friends. And my total confusion, because I didn't want them to look at my thighs. So I ran and grabbed a kanga and grabbed myself. And Nyerere said, "Don't worry, you have very beautiful thighs." Thank you very much.